In this video, you're going to learn 3 practical ways that you can follow the Spirit while leading worship. Coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com, your daily dose of practical worship leading tips. If you want to find those tips, head over to Instagram or Facebook at Leading Worship Well, where I'm posting new worship leading tips every single day. But you're here on YouTube, so go ahead, hit subscribe down below, and let's get into it, because today we're talking about Spirit-led worship. Spirit-led worship. It's such a buzzword in the worship leading community because we all want to be Spirit-led, and we hear that phrase, but I rarely see it defined, and people don't know what it means. Like, they'll throw the term out there, but I think it's either, number one, they don't really know what they're doing whenever they're leading worship, so they just kind of use that phrase to just mean I can do whatever I want whenever I lead worship. Or number two, they do know what they're doing whenever they lead worship, but they just don't want to explain it to people and take the time to think the steps out of what they're actually doing, and so they just say my worship is Spirit-led. Or number three, they use it as an excuse to just not prepare to lead worship at all, and they're like, I can just step on stage in front of my church on Sunday. I don't really need to practice the songs. I don't really need to practice my speaking transitions because the Spirit is going to lead me on Sunday morning. But as we're going to learn, the Spirit can lead you not just on Sunday morning, but all throughout the week. We'll get into that in a second. But I want to know from you right now, do you consider your worship Spirit-led? And if you do, then what does that mean for you and your church? Take like a minute to just think about it. If you were to actually describe to somebody what Spirit-led worship means, how would you describe it? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like as you're scrolling down there to leave a comment, and I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks so much for leaving your comment down below. I want to see how you define Spirit-led worship. And if you have no idea what it means, that's okay, because in this video, I'm going to share 3 practical ways that you can actually follow the Spirit while leading worship, all right? We're not using this ambiguous, unspecific, fluffy term of Spirit-led worship. I'm actually going to show you what it looks like today and give you 3 ways that you can actually implement it into your worship leading. So what are the 3 ways? Let's get into it. I'll preface these 3 points by saying this. To me, Spirit-led worship means primarily listening to the Holy Spirit while you are preparing to lead worship and actually leading worship. So these 3 practical ways that you're going to see to implement Spirit-led worship into your worship leading are all going to be about listening, but there are different functions of that listening or different outcomes of that listening in our worship leading. So the first way that you can practically be led by the Spirit while leading worship, or in your worship leading in general, is to listen for words to sing. Just listen for words to sing. We are worship leaders, and there's kind of like a silent word in front of that title worship leader that we don't usually put in there. It's kind of like the P in front of pterodactyl. We don't say the P in front of pterodactyl. Well, we don't say musical worship leader in front of worship leader. We just say worship leader. But at least for people on this channel, music is the primary means through which you lead worship. In a congregational setting, we are facilitating musical worship, and we understand that there are other ways to lead worship, but a big part of what we do is to lead worship musically, and therefore to be Spirit-led in musical worship involves singing, right? So you want to listen for words to sing. Now, what's that look like? There's a couple different ways. We'll start off with the most obvious, which is what people think of whenever they hear the term Spirit-led worship, and that's this idea of spontaneous worship. So spontaneous worship is you're playing a song on Sunday and you get an idea for words to sing from the Spirit. It's Spirit-led. So you're playing and maybe you leave a little space in a song to linger, and in that you have these words come into your head because you are contemplating what it means for your church, what the song that you just led means for your church, and maybe God gives you some words to sing and you start singing those. So that's spontaneous worship. I won't go too much into it in this video. If you want to learn more about how to lead spontaneous worship without confusing your church, click this video right here. I'll also leave a link to that video down in the description below so you can check it out after this video is over. But that's the most obvious that we think of. But I want to cover a few other ways that you can listen for words to sing. And the first is this: in your worship preparation. as you're preparing to lead worship, spontaneous worship, I believe, isn't just something that happens on Sunday morning. It can also happen in your preparation. So you can be running through your songs for Sunday, and you can leave space as you are worshiping through your set list to facilitate these moments of spontaneous worship. And they might not be spontaneous whenever you lead them on Sunday if you've prepared them in advance, but they are spontaneous in that moment of preparation, and they are spirit-led. So these might be new words that you want to add to a part of a song, and you just implement that into your leading worship, into your worship leading. So how do you do that? Like I said, run through your set list, run through the songs, leave space where you think there might be a moment for spontaneous worship. If you've never done it before, just play a chord progression from some part of the song, the bridge or the chorus or whatever, and just sing whatever comes to mind. Think about what you've already sung in the song, and then think, how else can I elaborate on that? That's a good place to start, and then it'll grow from there. Spontaneous worship leading is a skill, I believe, that you can develop if you actually put in the work in your preparation. Now, the other way that spirit-led worship happens in your worship preparation is you can let the Spirit lead you in what songs you're going to sing for Sunday. Like if the Spirit leads you in your song selection, and you don't just randomly pick 4 or 5 songs or however many songs you do at your church, then it is Spirit-led worship, because the Spirit has directed you to pick these certain songs out. So trust the Spirit in how you pick out songs. The Spirit doesn't just lead on Sunday mornings. The Holy Spirit leads you all throughout the week. So Spirit-led worship doesn't just happen on Sunday mornings. It can be Spirit-led worship preparation, which leads to Spirit-led worship. So that was the second thing. The third way that we listen for words to sing is actually during worship, but it's not spontaneous worship. Spirit-led worship can also mean whenever you're playing a song, and you get the sense that, man, I really need to repeat this part. And that's why you hear people complain about worship leaders singing the bridge a million times. It's probably true. Sometimes we take it too far. Be sensitive to the room, but that is Spirit-led worship. Whenever you're singing a particular truth in a song and you get this sense, I need to repeat this again. Now, why do you get that sense that you need to repeat something again? And sometimes it's just a feeling that you have, but I think there's more to it than that. And it can be as tangible as, hey, I know the stories of the people in my church that I'm leading right now. I know their specific circumstances, and I'm leading into them, and I recognize that this truth in this song is really powerful for the season of life that they are in. So we aren't just going to sing it once. We're going to sing it again. And maybe you lead them through a specific moment where you speak into these specific circumstances in their lives and then say, this is our response to that. That would be an example of Spirit-led worship, where you get the sense that this person is going through this, and I know that they need to hear this truth again that we're singing. Maybe they didn't get it the first time, and so we need to sing it again. That's Spirit-led worship. So the first way you can practically follow the Spirit in worship, let the Spirit lead you while you're leading worship, is to listen for words to sing. The second way you can practically follow the Spirit while leading worship is to listen for words to say. So we talked about how worship leader is like a musical worship leader, but we're also leaders in the church, and leaders in the church speak truth into the people that they're leading. So not only do we listen for words to sing, but we also listen for words to say. And I believe that speaking transitions are very important whenever you're leading worship. That's why I did this entire series right here called What to Say While Leading Worship, the ultimate guide, where I take you through from the beginning of a service all the way to the end of a service, and everything in between. I show you how you can know what to say while leading worship. So I'll link that down in the description below if you want some in-depth training. I think there's like 2 hours of training or something crazy about what to say while leading worship. So if you really want to level up this part of your worship leading, go check out that playlist. But that being said, we're listening for words to say, and this also takes place in a couple different ways. And the first is, once again, in your preparation. You can be led by the Spirit to lead worship in your preparation. And what's that look like when it comes to what to say? Well, it means actually planning out your speaking transitions. You know, your speaking transitions are no more spiritual if you do them in the moment and just step up on stage and let whatever you want come out of your mouth, that's no more spiritual than if you actually put in the work and practice it in advance. And actually, I would say that we're probably giving our best to God even better if we practice in advance and at least have some idea of what we want to say. So I won't get into the specifics of how to come up with all that stuff. That's what the entire guide linked in the description below is for. But just plan your speaking transitions in advance and allow the Spirit to lead you in understanding what truth you need to highlight for your church. So you sit there and you're like, these are the songs we're doing. This is what's going on in people's lives in my church right now. This is the truth that they need to hear and respond to. And that's what you say. And the Spirit will show you that. Therefore, it is Spirit-led worship. So that's in your preparation. We also want to listen for words to say while we're actually leading. And how do you do that? Well, number one, you're singing these songs and you are thinking about what you're singing. Don't let you, I know that your mind wanders, right? I know how it is. You're in verse 2 and you're like thinking about what you're going to have for lunch today. It's crazy how that happens, how words can be flowing out of our mouths, but we're thinking about something completely different. It happens. How do you combat that and recenter yourself? Well, you think about the truth that you're singing about, and then you don't just do that, because that's just, if you were doing personal worship, that'd be great. But we are in corporate worship, and we're leading corporate worship. We're leading other people in worship. So you think about the truth that you're singing in a song, and then you think about how it applies to the people that you're leading in the moment. So sing the song, think about the truth that you're singing as you're leading it, and think about how that truth applies to the people that you're leading. And I guarantee if you do that, you're going to make these connections that, hey, we're singing about God's faithfulness right now. And this person that I see right in front of me while I'm leading worship, they're going through this in their lives. And it directly relates to God's faithfulness. And not only are they going through that, but somebody over here is going through something else, and somebody who's over here has this happening in their life, and it all has to do with God's faithfulness. And then you speak about God's faithfulness to them. And it doesn't have to be some long, eloquent speech or sermon. You just highlight God's faithfulness. That's just a specific example. So think about the words that you're saying while you're leading. Also, gauge the room. Like, open your eyes whenever you're leading worship. I talked about that in this video right here about the importance of opening your eyes. That's like the easiest thing that you can do while leading worship to improve your worship leading, is to keep your eyes open so that you can see what's going on in the room and react accordingly. And maybe whenever you do that, you see that maybe people aren't grasping something that you're singing, and so you need to pause for a moment and speak a little bit into what you're singing about, or maybe you need to teach them a part or whatever. And that can be Spirit-led worship, because you are looking at people, you're seeing what they're doing, and the Spirit is guiding you to lead them better. So listen for words to say. Listen for words to say in your preparation, and listen for words to say while you're actually leading worship. That is how to follow the Spirit while leading worship. Finally, number 3, and there's kind of 3 parts to our responsibility as worship leader, and we've covered 2 of them so far. The first is the musical part, where we said listen for words to sing. That's the musical piece of it. Then we are leading people, so we have to listen for words to say. And then there's this spiritual side, and the spiritual side flows into the others, obviously, as well. But the third thing that we need to do to follow the Spirit while leading worship is listen for words to pray. So sing, speak, pray. Or sing, say, pray. Sometimes you need to say something to your congregation, and you need to lead them in a moment, and you need to speak truth to them. But sometimes you just need to pray. You need to go to God in prayer, probably more often than we think. So while you're leading these songs, think about how can you petition God? How can you pray to God? Philippians 4:6 says, don't be anxious about everything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. That's what we should be doing as the church. It's okay to go to God in prayer and ask him for things like, God, this is going on in the life of our church right now. This is going on in the world right now, and we want to pray for that. And if you're thinking about how you can tie those moments in, those prayer moments in relation to the songs that you're leading while you're singing these songs, then the Spirit will lead you to lead your church in prayer. And that's one of the things that I think we're missing in church, is like this idea of corporate prayer. I think we pray a lot in churches, but usually it's like the pastor on stage just gives this prayer over the people, but we are called as the church to pray together. And I think that our musical time of worship is a great place to do that, where we can leave some space in a song and lead people through praying for a specific thing. People can pray for themselves, you can lead them through those moments, but then there's also this idea of like collective prayer, where you say, we want to pray for this right now, like this is going on in the life of our church, and we're going to pray over it and trust God's faithfulness. And you lead people through that moment of prayer, and you'll find those moments because the Spirit will lead you if you are aware of the Spirit leading you and you're listening to the words that you're singing and trying to come up with those connections. You don't have to conjure them up, but the Spirit will point you towards them. So that's a practical way that you can follow the Spirit while leading worship. So those are 3 ways that the Spirit can lead you while leading worship. And I hope that puts a little bit more meat on this definition of Spirit-led worship that people just kind of throw out. I hope it's no longer an ambiguous, fluffy, spiritual term, but you can see that like this is a practical thing that happens. The Spirit literally leads you as you're leading other people. And how does the Spirit do that? Well, whenever you listen for words to sing, because we are musical worship leaders, the Spirit points us in the right direction of picking out the right songs, and maybe spontaneous worship, things like that. Whenever we listen for words to say, we are leaders in the church, so the Spirit gives us truth to share with our church, and then we listen for words to pray. We are spiritual leaders in our church. And so we lead our church in praying for specific things, and the Spirit shows us those things that we should be praying for. So I hope that helps you out. Lead in the Spirit this Sunday, and not just on this Sunday, but in your preparation as you continue to prepare for worship this week. Allow the Spirit to lead you. Allow the Spirit to reveal to you the things that you need to sing, to reveal to you the things that you need to say, and the things that you need to pray for. Hey, before you go, if you want to improve your worship leading, I put together a free audio training. It's called 5 Tips to Instantly Improve Your Worship Leading. It's completely free. It's like a 25-minute audio training where I share with you these 5 tips that will instantly improve your worship leading. They aren't hard things to do. You just have to be conscious of them and make the effort to do them. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description below. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me today. Until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.